My guest in the Nimataion today is Karl Abrahamsson, and together we are spinning a yarn. Karl, it's an honor to have you. You're a author, scholar, lecturer, publisher, editor, filmmaker, photographer, I don't know what else. Culture is one of your main topics, historian of magic and the occult, and so much more. Great to have you here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It can be a problem sometimes in terms of introductions, but it's basically because I've always been very curious and hungry and sort of greedy for information, and I just can't help it. And then it's also a lot of fun, like the films I do, for instance, usually documentary films. For me, it's like an extension of the writing. It's like being a journalist, but in video form in a way. So yeah, but the magic lies in the writing, and that's what we'll connect to when we talk about the book or the story.
Yeah. As a storyteller myself, I'm very interested in how stories shape our imagination, our reality, our world, our expression in art and magic. And so, yeah, what has been your favorite childhood story?
Right. Then, you come to this thing with the childhood memories. It's like often kind of a post-construction. We were told things as we were growing up that this is what it was like when you were, growing up, and this is what you did. But I try to really think back to formative, short stories or stories. I was very much interested in comics. And then movies, that's another kind of story. But I wanted to focus this on written stories, like literary stuff. And I well, probably when I was, not a child, but like a young teenager, I had already started reading things in English. And there were a couple of good bookstores in Stockholm where I was living who had sort of science fiction and underground books. And it was a fun place. And I remember very much getting an anthology of Ray Bradbury short stories. Science fiction, weird stuff, and that stayed with me. And later on, when I returned to Bradbury in adult years, I found this story again, also titled The Illustrated Man, specifically, the story. And I have a memory of having read that originally when I was about 13. And it did make an impression, and it made an even greater impression when I read it as an adult. So maybe it was a kind of a connection there. But that story for me is like, it's a genius story, amazingly magical. And it's so short, condensed, focused, also well written. It's only a couple of pages. And it is this story about a guy who meets a drifter, someone who's just on his way, and this person that he meets asks him if he can help him find a job. He hasn't had a steady job in like 40 years, and the more they talk, they gradually it's revealed to us that it's because of his tattoos. He has tattoos like from his neck down, and not on the hands, but the upper torso and the arms and stuff like that. That might not be a big deal, but the protagonist of the story who experiences this realizes that these tattoos are very, very special. And the person in question who has the tattoos is very aware of that also. And the problem is they look great in the daytime, but in the nighttime, they come alive. And that can be very, very scary for people. Everybody wants to see it, but they become so freaked out. So he has worked a lot in sideshows and circuses, but he can never keep a job because it gets too scary. And then, of course, the guy who meets this illustrated man asks him, "How did you get them?" And he says that it was a woman from the future who tattooed him. The scenes on his body depict scenes of the future. So, and this is only in a few pages, but Bradbury manages to sort of evoke this little meeting between these men, and the person has such a weird thing, not tattoos, but more like tableau vivant in a way, all over his body, and that's the story. and that really made an impression on me, I would say as a 13-year-old, but definitely as an adult when I have returned to this story many, many times.
So Great. That's yeah, Bradbury for you. And how what in particular about this story moved you so much? How?
I think there are many reasons, and I think that's of course why we are fascinated specifically with one or two or three stories, few stories, is because they affect you on so many different levels. One can be like, oh, a distance one saying this is a great piece of storytelling, from an author standpoint, but it's also I get emotionally involved, and I think it has to do with someone being an outsider in a way, so much an outsider that he has to hide his true self for reasons that he carries stories. And that's the real parable or metaphor here. He has experience, and it gets weird when he has experience of the future, because that's not in our normal linear narrative in a way. So he's a weirdo. People are fascinated, but he will always be outside, and that plagues him. He knows that he's unique. And I think also this thing where stories become connected in a way. He has this all over his body. It's like in the story, they awaken in the nighttime, one after another. So they're not all active all the time. It's almost like the first little story awakens the next story and becomes like a storytelling of different stories. So it's incredibly psychedelic also, which I like. And then I have integrated the not the tableau vivant thing, but I have integrated tattoos on my own body with this specific purpose, having to do with my books. When I was young, I got some tattoos because, it's like magical sigils, whatever stuff that you do when you're young. But later on in my more mature years, I've started making tattoos that are symbols of the books I'm working on or have finished. So I also have a meta story going on my body and my skin of all the stories and the books that I've written now exist in symbolized form on my body. So that's how much amazing. I love this short story.
Yeah, that's condensing your work into stories and integrating them into your body, and that's
exactly.
Yeah, a kind of sigilizing stories into your very being.
Absolutely. And with that in mind, I started that process very consciously based on this short story by Bradbury, in the sense that whatever we do, whether we write a poem or a book about something or a novel, whatever, these are all creations, these are all stories in a way, and I sort of sum up my books in symbolized form on my skin. And I can say that it's been a beneficial, benevolent, good thing, in the sense that it has reminded me and keeps reminding me about being diligent and writing and keeping a good discipline. I also love pens a lot, so I could collect usually one pen for each book project. That becomes like a little talisman in a way. Mm-hmm. So I feel that I'm very immersed in my creative writing process with a magical mind frame. It's very much meta. I usually write about magic, but it also is magic for me.
Yeah. I totally get it. For me, my tattoos as well, they are symbols of processes I've been through, and they accompany myself 24/7. It's the information of that is within me, and so I'm an expression of them as well.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I find it also very interesting in terms of it's almost like inflation in terms of tattoos and body modifications, and it's been increasing over the past decades, and now it's so commonplace that I would call it an inflation, because people want to express how unique they are, but yet they look exactly like everyone else. It's either like the soccer players for the guys, or the sort of cool model ladies, whatever, or the reality soap stars, and they're all like little Ken and Barbie dolls with tattoos. It's weird. And I saw this funny little cartoon a couple of years ago, but it made an impression also. Someone who's standing before a circus tent, and there's a sign saying, come in and see the untattooed lady.
Yes, I know that one.
Yeah, it's very good.
How last 100 years have changed.
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. So in my worldview, it's like we are the nesting places of stories. They need us to embed themselves in the physical world, and of course they give us something, we give them something. So it's a great symbol for this constantly evolving feedback loop we are in with stories, the illustrated man. And
Absolutely. And also, I remember when, growing up in Sweden, there were only 2 channels on TV, and when there was good stuff on, Saturday evening might be a horror film or something to look forward to. But now we're like so saturated with fiction in the same way. It's like inflation. So we sort of passively receive instead of choosing and being sort of picky about quality and what we really like. And I think that's, of course, it's a negative thing, but it also, for certain people, makes you realize how important it is to keep your own unique sense of quality and focus going, because otherwise you will drown in this sort of tsunami of like-mindedness, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah, it was the same here in Austria. Yeah, wonderful. I mean, Carl, thank you so much. That has been very illuminating.
Yes, illustrating.
Yeah. I didn't want to go there. Yeah, thank you so much. How we are impregnated by stories.
Absolutely. By the way, in terms of the word illuminating, it's very interesting also, medieval manuscripts that were colored by hand and stuff like that. They're called illuminated manuscripts. And that, I think, is so beautiful and so magical also.
Yes.
That it's not only a beautiful book and that has information, or as we would say today, data to be ingested. It was actually illuminated in the enlightening sense, affecting you literally between the lines also. That's another very, very interesting area.
Yeah, and I've read a paper, historian, forgot his name right now, where he wrote about that in the medieval studies, they were written aloud, not in a booming voice, but everyone for himself. This silent reading is quite modern. So that was also the writing and reading was quite a visceral act, accompanied by these wonderful illustrations. If you think about the Book of Kells, it's just that psychedelic. I mean,
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, fascinating stuff. Books are magic. That's just how it is.
Yeah. Perfect ending. Carl, thank you so much.
And don't read Illustrated Man by Red Bradbury.
Yeah, I link it in the show notes as well as your homepage. And I'm happy to talk with you again.
Yeah, anytime. More stories.
Yes, totally. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
The world is magic.
Bye.